All right, we are live on Las Vegas Triathlon Club, and it's Thursday night, time for a member spotlight. And tonight we've got a member who has been a member of the club for a few years, Annie Alba. Hey, Annie, how's it going?
I'm doing great today. How are you guys?
Doing good, thank you. Thanks for joining us. And this is going to be fun to get to know you, get to know your story a little bit more. And you've been involved with triathlon for some time, and so this is going to be really neat to hear the different races you've done and why you got into triathlon. But before I get going too far, I've got to turn this over to Bob Gamble, our co-host, and going to kick us off with the official introduction.
Well, thank you so much, John. I appreciate it. I hope you're doing well tonight. And Annie, thanks for being here with us tonight. I really enjoyed whenever we were at Cane Creek and you were riding out there, and it was like 35 degrees. So that shows you're a trooper, and as far as getting involved in the club and our events. So we really appreciate that. And thanks for coming on tonight. And one of the for the folks listening, Annie's been doing triathlons since 2013. So she's got about 10 years of experience with that. And she's been an endurance athlete also. She's doing half marathons and a lot of road races, running. And one thing I find interesting about Annie, and one thing that is interesting about Annie, is that she does sprints and ollies. And that falls right in line with last year's and one of our ongoing mottos is enjoy the journey. And Annie, whenever she's out on an event, you can tell she's having a good time. So it's always wonderful to have Annie in in the events. And one interesting thing about Annie, and this is what I'm going to ask her about, Annie has a degree in exercise science, and that just sounds like a fascinating degree to have a field to have a degree in. So Annie, welcome for one. For two, tell us about your degree in exercise science. How did you select that? And what is it? What is it about? And what made you go there?
So we'd have to go back into the way back time machine to the time that I was in college. And I started off as a biology major and quickly realized that the medical school and biology major wasn't for me. And the next thing that I was interested in was exercise science, which I believe from what I've heard is very similar to kinesiology of today's
Okay.
majors, because this was fairly new, of course, when I was back in school all those many years ago.
Well, let's stop it.
However, I did not grow up in sports. I never did sports as in high school or as a child. I had first generation mom, which everything was geared towards education. So I was not, a sports girl.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then what the heck made you get, well, yeah, what made you get into triathlon then? I mean, if you're not a sports girl, that's a pretty big leap.
It is a pretty big leap. I was always interested in working out. I did run a little bit around the track and, did a lot of aerobics when that was the thing. It's just something that was very interesting. I love studying about the human body. And just, I kind of fell into it and I really enjoyed it since then. And of course, I like the technical part of training, nutrition, and the human body and how good it is for us to do endurance events.
Well, you're going to open yourself up to a whole lot of questions, because it's like those are the science behind the exercise is something that a lot of people, myself included, are just fascinated by and interested in. And the more you know, the more you realize you don't know, and the more you know, the more questions you can ask. So
exactly.
So, like I said, you have just identified yourself as a resource here for the club, whether you like it or not.
Well, I don't know about that, and a lot has changed in all these years, but I certainly do enjoy reading and learning about all of the new studies that come out and everything that I can try and apply to myself to make me a better athlete.
Well, then in 2013, what made you get into triathlon?
Well, I was running quite a bit, and as a lot of runners do, I was getting injured quite frequently.
Ah,
And so I thought, well, let me just try it. I don't know anything about it. I didn't really know how to swim. And I went to the YMCA and took swimming lessons with the little kids. And
oh, awesome.
yeah, and I decided to just try it. And I borrowed a wetsuit and had a little sports bike and thought, this is something I can keep doing.
Oh,
It's a challenge. It's really, it's frightening for me to swim. So I like to try and do things to challenge my own psyche, my physical fitness.
And what's really cool about that, I don't know of any two people that have had the same introduction into triathlon. If you know what I mean. Everybody gets into it with a certain thing. So you didn't have an athletic background and you taught yourself or learned how to swim.
Mhm.
And your first bike was not a tri bike, was it?
Oh, no. And I still don't have a tri bike. I have a very nice road bike. I'd like to do a little everything, including multi-day cycling events with some other
Oh, okay.
friends. Yeah.
What multi-day trips have you had done on your bike?
We did one a few years ago in Missouri, and it was a 7-day ride across Missouri where you went from town to little town to little town, which was so much fun.
hmm.
Yeah.
I've got to change the position of my camera here.
Oh, then
Right.
I'll jump in while you're
Go ahead,
changing
please.
your camera. Boy, that sounds super interesting. I want to go back to your exercise science degree, which I love. That's so cool. Where did you do your training at? Or where'd you do your undergrad at?
At USC.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic. They've got a great program. And so
Yeah.
I can see the link between biology and exercise science. I can see how you'd be drawn to that degree because there's a lot of biology in exercise science. So you must have been nailing the courses in exercise science at that point. So they must have loved you.
Oh, it was a super fun degree for sure.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so I like how you got involved with, well, I don't like that you were injured and you got involved with triathlon, but that is an often way for people to get involved with the sport because you can't do the running that you would have liked to have been doing, so you can bike and swim. I love hearing this, that didn't really know how to swim and you went and took lessons. And you said you took the lessons with the kids at that point?
Oh, yeah. Just went to the YMCA up the street and swam with some, learned how to get across the pool.
You got to start somewhere. That's fantastic.
Well, I didn't know where else to start, and that's what I did. And
No.
I guess it worked out.
So
And
when did you get into the open water swimming, or did you do any open water swimming before the race?
I had a couple of girlfriends and we did go out to the lake
No.
and swim a few times.
Good.
And once we actually drove all the way up to Sand Hollow and decided to do a few laps
Oh,
up there just to
yeah.
see what it was like for that event.
was San Hollow your first triathlon, you think?
I think
Or
it
was it
was the
Cocopelli?
no, I'd done Cocopelli, but I think it was Rage in the Sage.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's
Something
great.
simple where I didn't have to get too terribly stressed out.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And what's really cool too is that we have, you probably realize that there's a whole lot of new triathletes in our club. I mean, a lot of new triathletes. And it's wonderful for them to hear
Mhm.
that you weren't, like have a big athletic background and you didn't even know how to swim and you went out and you got a bike. So it's like, that's really cool for everybody to hear, is the fact that you don't need all that to get started. And you got started,
Yeah.
um, kind of like grassroots, going out and doing it. So that's pretty cool. That's big kudos to you.
Oh, thank you. And later in life, I didn't even start until I was, a mature adult after I had one of my kids. So,
Well,
Well,
and that's great to hear too.
likewise.
And a lot of people ask that question. They ask, "Am I too old to get started?" And the answer is no. There's people starting triathlon at all different ages, and so that's great to hear. Um, Tell me what you remember from your first race. So if that was Rage, that would have been the time that we were running up the desert in essence. I don't know, that was part of that run course at one point. But what do you
A lot
remember
of it
from
was in the
your
dirt.
first race?
I remember that it went a lot smoother than I thought.
Hmm.
And much like running a marathon, I was worried most about not having enough energy to finish.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very, I did my bike very slowly. I didn't have much experience riding competitively or, for speed or anything. I just wanted to finish.
Mm-hmm.
And I did, and it was exhilarating. So I wanted to do it again, and I did, but it's also very scary for me. It's
Yeah.
very scary.
Yeah,
What-
well, courage is, isn't being fearless. You have to have a little bit of
I
courage.
think I think Bob's
You
Wi-Fi.
know what I mean? It's like without fear, there's no courage, because courage is facing fears.
Bob, we lost you there.
Yeah, probably. I'm having some technical difficulty.
Yeah, we lost you there for a bit. So hold on. I think I'll try to get to your question. I think I know. So it's neat that I love it that you say something was scary, but you're still doing it and you're taking on that challenge. So what is it about the event maybe early on that maybe was that challenge that you had to try to overcome?
Oh, it was everything, back in the day, I bought a beginner's triathlon book and I had to read it, and I read about training. I didn't have a coach at the time. I just pulled some free guides online and did it. And I did not know what to expect. I did not volunteer at an event or
Yeah.
go to an event just to
Yeah.
even spectate, see what it was
Mhm.
about, or even pull up a YouTube at the time. I
Mhm.
just went and did it because I thought, why not?
I love it. Well, and your exercise science degree at that point, I think that probably gives you a little bit of comfort in terms of trying to understand how to prepare the body for that type of event. But yeah, that's neat, and I really love the approach of just going and completing the event versus trying to, go all out and just barely cross the finish line. I think that's a great approach as you've gone on. So after you did Rage, how soon was it before you signed up for your next event?
I think it was later on that year.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So
And there, one important thing that you said that I always think about what people are hearing whenever they listen to you, and the fact that you were smart. You didn't go out hard. You didn't go out and
No.
you weren't paying a lot of heed to a time. You didn't have a time. Your goal was to finish, which is what it should be in your first one. And then you were smart about it, not like a lot of folks, and I'm talking about myself, would go out for the first 150 yards, run out of breath, and you wind up rolling on your back. So you actually did it smart and you finished.
Mhm.
So big kudos to you on that as well.
well, thank you. I'm not a very fast athlete for it by any means. I am slow and steady. And I've actually slowed down a little bit more lately. And of course, we all do as we age. But I found that it has kept me injury free as long as I don't
Mhm.
crash my bike, which I've done times.
Oh,
But, that's I don't go out to win because I don't think I can, first of all, but I think I do it just for the enjoyment, like you said, for the ride too, the training. I love the training. I
mhm.
love having a purpose every single day,
Mm.
go out and get, of course, I have a coach now.
Uh-huh.
So I get my assignment and that's fun for me.
Give a shout out to your coach. Who's coaching you?
Luigi.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, he's a lot of fun too, as well as a good coach.
Yeah, he gives me some really fun workouts, mixes things up, uses strength training.
Oh, good.
I've been training with him for about 2, maybe 3 years now. So
Mhm.
it's been really fun. I enjoy working with him quite a bit. And of course, it's always fun to see him out there at Red Rock riding his bike, zooming past.
Right.
pretty awesome.
And I just love the fact that, you know, in the last minute, I think you said fun 5 times. So
That's right.
and again, that will keep you in the sport, keep you from burning out. And that's wonderful to
Well,
hear.
I'm going to pick up on that, Bob, because I think that's a great thing to hear. You've been doing this for 10 years, and that is really neat. So my question was going to be, what's the secret sauce? How do you keep going and doing this?
Well, I think a lot of my friends who don't do endurance racing and don't enjoy physical exercise think I'm just a nut.
Mm,
Um, I really like it. It helps me
yeah.
with mental health. It keeps me physically strong. It keeps me in tune with my body so I can keep my body in the shape that I want it to be in. So for me, it's a pleasure having
Hmm.
that goal, even if that goal is just for the workout of the day,
Yeah.
not necessarily,
Yeah.
winning a race or anything like that.
Mhm.
I have a question for you, Annie. And I think I know the answer to this, but I'd like to know what's behind the answer to this. Is it doesn't sound like you treat triathlon as a job, something you have to do in order to do well in the races. You do it because you actually love the training and the racing. So how do you do that?
I don't know. It's very odd. I could probably, like during COVID, I realized I didn't miss racing. I really just enjoyed the training. Um, Now, I just did a couple of running events and, like I went to Rock and Roll and I volunteered there. And then I realized I do miss it. I miss the excitement. I have
Mhm.
been in it for a little bit and it's time to get back.
Yeah. The training is fun but it's on race morning. It's just an excitement that feels good.
The whole buildup, you got to get your gear together. You get to go to the expo. You got to wake up,
Hmm.
the whole experience for me is important.
Very good.
Oh, I love that. So how about compare and contrast what you're doing now for training versus what you did in the beginning?
Oh, in the beginning, I just, like I said, I had a little printout from my computer that I would just follow on a regular schedule.
Yeah.
Now it's very different. Of course, I have Luigi. He does all that for me, so I don't really have to think about it. And there's things that I never did before, like speed work.
Mm.
Never did that when I was just running and then nutrition as well. Nutrition, hydration, all of that has become I've had to fine tune it over all these years. And I think it's I think about that a lot more.
That's fun to learn, isn't it? The nutrition end of it and the exercise physiology, and it ties back into your degree again, exercise science. That's fun.
It is. And it's fun to experiment with what works for my body because everybody's different. So
And you haven't been injured
I
since you
haven't been
started
injured
triathlon?
for probably 5 years. I did crash my bike a couple times. So that, skin knees,
Yeah.
torn. I've had some torn ACLs, so I had to get those redone. That has nothing to do with triathlon, how those
Oh.
happen. No.
Well, maybe that was a skiing trip. That's.
Actually, we were hiking.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. Okay.
yeah.
Oh, well, I love this. I mean, it sounds, I actually can pick up in your voice how much you enjoy the training. And that's neat to hear because I think you're right. If you can enjoy the training, you can have a long term, long time in this sport. So
Without injury, yes.
I'm going to ask you a negative question. What's the mistake that maybe you made, or what's a mistake that you see new triathletes make as they get into the sport?
I think a big mistake that some people make is getting too financially invested
Mm,
going out and buying gear that is not quite right for them. And the only way you would know is by doing more of them, getting on different bikes, knowing a bike fit. Same with wetsuits. Like I've been through a couple wetsuits that was not really the smartest thing. I think that's tough. I think that's tough for every beginner to try and get the gear. And sometimes you just jump the gun. You're so excited, I don't blame them. It's very exciting. I love getting a new bike and
new shiny stuff. Yes.
yeah. That's
And
fun.
this is another great message coming from you for new folks, is the fact that put a little bit more energy into your training and your body, and the gear will come in time. You don't have to get it all at first. You don't have to spend all that money at first. And you did what was your first bike?
My first bike was a little Fuji sport bike.
Mhm.
And you had fun on it.
I had a lot of fun on it.
Wow.
In fact, that picture that you posted was on that old Fuji.
And that's good. I just wanted to reiterate that's such a wonderful message. You can spend a whole lot of money on a lot of stuff and then realize you're not as fast on it as you are on something else. It's kind of like if you put a student driver in a Formula One car, they're not going to be able to drive it fast. They can't. You'd be better off in something else first.
Right.
Yeah, I'll echo that. And I love that you borrowed a wetsuit and you started on a bike that was not expensive. It's hard, you get into the sport, you go to a race and you're standing there looking at all the other gear that other athletes have. And it's hard not to say, oh, I need that. When in reality, you don't need a lot of that. You need to do the training and then get the gear as you're achieving what you're working towards. So I love that message. So
yeah,
great one.
The wisdom of Annie Alba. We're gonna have to capture some of these.
So thinking back again, I'm totally respecting the love of training. I'm going to ask you another question about your proudest moment, and I'm wondering if that's going to be a race or if that's some type of training that you've done.
Oh, besides learning how to swim, that was huge, and getting
It's a major milestone.
yeah. I completed a couple of marathons and I was really proud of that. So I think I really need to do a longer distance triathlon, because I was really proud of the fact that I could complete a marathon. I've done a handful of them. And I'd like to be able to put in the time, the hours in each day to do a longer distance.
Speaking of that, do you have anything planned like that for 2023?
I don't, because this year we are spending about 2 months, leaving at the end of this month, going up to Alaska and the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, wow.
We're still trying to figure out retirement and training and everything else, and races. And then later on this year, my son's getting married in October.
Congratulations.
In Hawaii. Well, thank you.
Oh, in Hawaii. Awesome.
I know. And so that kind of puts a damper on some of the races, and not a damper, but a hitch in training. And I'd like to be prepared.
Well, you're doing smart about it, instead of like saying, scheduling them all and trying to squeeze it in. That's how you get injured. So that's very smart. You sounds like all along the way you've been smart about it.
Well, I'd like to think so. And there's nothing to say that I'm not going to be doing some of the tri-club events, and maybe another sprint later on this year if it works out with our schedule.
Very good.
Well, and I love, and I'm going to go back to the proudest moment that you first mentioned, which was learning to swim, which is such a great skill to learn, and it's not easy when we're adults trying to pick up swimming. So I can certainly see as a proud moment. I'm curious now, when you toe the start line of an event, is there any hesitancy to swimming at this stage, or you feel like you've got that figured out, or and was it a little bit of hesitancy in that first race?
Oh, there's a lot of hesitancy in that first race. It was, but I think it was most mental.
Mm,
Mental block not to get freaked out in the open water. I could,
yeah,
get in a pool and do laps for hours.
well,
But that's different, getting up, picking your head up and spotting was a whole new thing. 'Cause,
Mhm.
you don't even do that when you practice, or I didn't,
yeah,
go to the lake a couple of times and do some going back and forth, where you didn't have to pick up your head and look for the buoy and not follow those guys that are going way off course.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
great.
not following the black line in the bottom of the pool.
Exactly, exactly. So there is still hesitancy. I mean, I feel
Yeah,
very comfortable on a bike. I, grew up like as a little kid riding a bike, so I feel pretty comfortable on a bike. And of course, I've been running for a long time. So
mhm.
that is, the toughest part. I think that's true for a lot of triathletes.
Oh, very much so, and it's so good that you brought this up, and you even talked about learning to swim, going to a YMCA and learning there, and then learning to pool swim, and then ultimately taking it out to the lake. And I think that's respects the event and certainly prepares you. So that's really great to hear.
You know?
Yeah.
So, all right. So now you've got 2023, you've got a wedding planned, and you're going to do some more running races as well.
Yes.
No. So back to the roots.
Yeah. Yeah. Just trying to keep myself busy this year
Yeah,
without overwhelming myself, because I
uh,
do get, there's a lot going on.
yeah, there is. And so out of all these different events that you've done, and even including the bike one, what has been your favorite distance?
Oh, the half marathon is
Yeah,
something that I love. I've done so many of them,
yeah,
and
Hmm.
I think I really like the sprint. If that's something that I can do and get faster at
yeah.
and accomplish that, I think that would be maybe in the next year or two,
Hmm.
get a PR with that. That would be awesome.
And I
And
think you're going to be way ahead of the game if you do a 70.3 because you've already got your accomplished at half marathons.
yeah,
So you're gonna
well,
you're
that's
gonna have a
after a long bike ride, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
yeah, you're
Well,
gonna do
I,
fine.
I also love the sprint distance. I think those are a lot of fun. So that I'm glad to hear that's and sometimes people say, "Oh, I just did the sprint," but
Just a sprint.
that is really an accomplishment. It's still and it's a lot of fun.
And sprints can hurt worse than 70.3s, or they do. You go harder.
That's true. That's true. Although, I only did one Olympic length, and I was the absolute last person out of the water.
Mm,
My age group and my I don't know, my sex, whatever, was the last one to get in. I was the last one to get out.
hmm.
And that was very defeating when you're
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
last one out of there. But I made up time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was good. It turned out to be a very good race.
Well, and that's great to hear because a lot of times you get done with the swim and like you said, maybe you were in this position or that, but there's still two more segments, and you can still enjoy. It's the three sports put together, and so that's great that you were able to put that aside and then continue to on with the event.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, those my, running's my first love,
Yeah,
and cycling's catching up because I
yeah,
really love that.
yeah,
And swimming, it actually feels good on my body.
yeah.
Go out there, especially if you've been running and cycling hard. So
Hmm.
it's, I enjoy it. I'm just not very fast on it, and that's okay.
Well, I gotta think that the long bike ride that you would have done back in 2013 to prepare for that race was probably far shorter than what you do for a long bike ride now. And I imagine that's a great accomplishment that you can go out for a long bike ride, whereas in 2013, maybe 10 miles was a long ride.
That's exactly true. I mean,
That's
I
right.
enjoy centuries and multi-day rides, and it's
Yeah.
and I have, upgraded my bike a couple of times.
Oh, I love it. Annie, this has been so good to talk with you. I really love how you approach it. And I love that you love training. And I think that that is such an important part. And it's really, the story behind being able to be in the sport for a long period of time.
Yeah. And I love the wisdom that you've gained along the way, that just some of the things you said are just so smart.
Yeah.
So, it's like, I'm glad a lot of people are going to hear that.
Well, I feel like some of it was like the school of hard knocks,
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. So,
Well, you came out on the good side of it.
Yeah, I'm still doing them. I haven't
Wow,
stopped yet, so
that's great.
I'm
All right.
happy.
Well, Annie, thanks so much for joining us and talking about your triathlon journey. That's great to hear.
Well, thanks
yeah,
for having me. It was fun
no,
talking.
it was wonderful having you on. Thanks so much for taking the time to do it.
Well, great. I'm sure I'll see you guys out at the next event, maybe on Saturday.
All right.
Yes, you will.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Have a good night.
Thank
Night,
you.
everybody.
Good night.